We are continuing with the theory and practice of universal ethics, the Noahide laws by Rabbi Dr. Shimon Dovid Cowen of Australia. We are on page 96. This is the last section of chapter 4, part 1, chapter 4, section 3, social organization. So we're going through the various mitzvahs, commandments of the 7, and showing from a philosophical perspective how important it is and all the other misguided or mistaken philosophies, how terrible they are. That's basically, to put it in very simple terms, because this book is written in very intellectual terms. So for some of us very simple people, that's oversimplifying. Okay. Again, page 96. Thank you for joining. Justice, the administration and the sources of law. The Noahide precept of justice. Now, to remind you, there are 7 Noahide commandments, 6 of which were given to Adam, the first man, and then those 6 were reiterated to Noah after the flood, and then the 7th one was added. And that is about the prohibition of eating a part of an animal that was taken from the animal while the animal was still alive. All 6 of them, not those 6, but 6 of the 7 are negative commandments. They're don'ts. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't. There's one of them, the 7th one in a sense, which is the, if you want to call it the safeguard or the instrument to implement all 6. And that one is a positive one. And that is to set up courts of law that are going to see to it that the community is run in a just fashion and that people keep the 6 laws, and in general, that people are abiding by proper laws. All right. So the Noahide precept of justice is, of course, an interpersonal one. It advocates between individuals and the state, which represents and upholds law, and between individuals themselves. But whilst it is concerned with the fairness and objectivity of this education, and much of its detail is concerned with this, an essential aspect of justice derives from the personal, moral culture of society. What this means is that legislators and judges should be beholden to the content of the universal ethics of the Noahide laws. In other words, it's not just that, well, there's laws of the land, and they're trying to make it a fair place to live and keep everybody safe, and everyone's property safe, and everybody's body safe, and let's all get along. That's true, but that's not all that it's about. It's actually to see to it to uphold the Noahide commandments, the divine law of God. The tradition of the Noahide law thus has a notion of laws which stand higher than those enacted by sovereign legislatures, because legislatures, as great as they may be, as wise as they may be, they're human beings. So therefore, the laws that we come up with are limited to human intellect, and therefore can, and at times should, change from location to location from time to time. Whereas the Noahide law, because that is divine, so that's higher than any other government. This is stated in the classic commentary by William Blackstone on the laws of England, that the laws which nations make, called positive laws, cannot clash with divine laws, sometimes also called natural laws, the content of which is disclosed by religious tradition. The application of this to legislatures is straightforward. Laws enacted by legislatures should not violate the universal principles expressed in the Noahide laws. This does not preclude a multiplicity of parties and viewpoints, but the laws resulting from the contents from the contest of politics should be within the parameter of that is consistent with Noahide laws. And he's going to go through and explain now more practically what that means. But basically, what we're saying is, sure, you can have a system like we do in the United States or in England or any other country where there can be lawmakers and you have your constitution and then you can make amendments. That's all fine, but it's within a certain framework, and there are certain areas that are out of bounds. And even if you have not only a majority, but if you have a unanimous vote of the lawmakers, including the people of the country, let's say everybody gets to vote on something, not just the representatives of the people, but let's say you actually have everybody vote just like we do as far as putting people in office. And everybody voted for a particular law, for something to be permitted or forbidden, whatever it may be. That doesn't necessarily give the country the right to do that. In other words, we have to work within the framework so long as it does not go against any of the Noahide commandments. All right? But within that area, you have a lot of area where there's to be different opinions, and they can fight it out and argue it and debate and politics, because it's either way is not going against the Noahide commandments. And we're going to get more detail. The same principle applies to judicial interpretation and application of laws. It is here relevant to note the words of the previous Chief Justice of the High Court of Australia, that the religious tradition of universal ethics informs, or rather, one could add, should inform, both the making and interpretation of law. A problem in this regard arises from recent judgments of the High Court of Australia. Now, again, because this rabbi who's writing this is Australian, he's writing it in Australia, and he's very familiar with the Australian law and so forth. But again, whatever he's saying, wherever you are, can apply in various different countries. Obviously, we know all too well how what he's saying over here is applicable in the United States and wherever else you may be, whether we have anybody with us today who's from the Philippines or from the neighbors of Australia. We have over there. Who did we have last week? We had someone from
New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah. Thank you. So whatever country you may be in, what he's saying right now, he's using Australia as the example. The first of these was in its judgment in regard to a challenge by the federal government to an Australian capital territory law providing for same-sex marriage on the grounds that the Constitution entrusts laws regarding marriage to the federal parliament alone. So it's in their hands to decide laws of marriage. The High Court struck the territory law down, dismissing the argument of the territory that the Constitution reserved to the federal parliament laws relating to marriage only in the sense of heterosexual marriage, whilst the territory, was legislating in a new category entitled same-sex marriage. The court rejected this, stating that marriage is a concept which no longer had the sense prescribed for it by religious tradition, that it could now also include same-sex marriage, and consequently, lawmaking regarding this variant was still within the province of the federal parliament alone. We see, at all events, that the High Court did not feel beholden to the universal ethics of the Noahide laws on this point. In other words, they kind of missed the whole point by arguing the way they did. It's a much bigger point. The bigger picture is that we cannot decide the institution of marriage based on anything other than the Word of God. And since this is what he said, that's what we have to go by. They have a lot of details, that's fine, to discuss the obligation and the financial obligation. There's a lot to be said, but it has to be that it's male and female. You can't have same-sex marriage. The second case was the High Court's striking down the funding of religious chaplains for schools, which the federal government had funded under the power constitutionally granted to it to legislate and allocate funding in regard to student benefits. The court argued that student benefits are limited solely to material and pecuniary benefits, not spiritual benefits. So a chaplain, by definition, is a spiritual benefit. This would also jar with the universal ethics that man does not live by bread alone, but by all that comes from the mouth of God, which of course is a quote, it's a verse in Deuteronomy. In other words, that religious chaplaincy is also an integral educational benefit. Another important issue under the rubric of justice for Western societies, as much as for poorer societies, is the educative function of legislatures and the legal system. This means not simply to make, educate, and administer law and its underlying values, but also to teach them. The fundamental underlying issue in law and order is, as the former Chief Justice pointed out, not merely the toughness of the penalties, but the inclination of ethics and values in the population generally, and not only in the detained criminal population, meaning even people who have not yet committed crimes or were caught. Those who commit crimes come largely from dysfunctional familial backgrounds and very low personal education. Obviously, it's not always the case, but often that's the case. Society, families and communities, and preemptively schools needs an education and fortification in values. The task of justice is not only educate, but also to teach. I would say not only educate, but educate. So in other words, you have to educate them. That's the whole point, and starting from a very young age. So he's bringing good examples where, at least in Australia, and again, as I said, applies surely in the United States, in many areas, they miss the point. They're trying to, or they're debating certain things, but they're missing the main point, which means that since it's God-given, so therefore there's no room to debate the basic understanding of what rights there are and what needs to be done. Next thing, we're on the bottom of page 98. Economic ethics, mutuality, and human dignity. Theft is an act which negates another's ownership of his or her property. It is the opposite of mutuality, reciprocity, and regard for the other. So also is fraud and deception, and in the area of civil law, harm to another's property, even where this is not taken from the other's possession. The Noahide laws relating to theft and material harm uphold the ideal of regard for another's person and property by defining and prohibiting all the acts, or which could be said to constitute insufficient care for them. So again, it's a very general idea, and one might say, well, is this permitted, is that not, and what does copyright mean, and all those things. But in general, we have to get the idea, what is this law all about? What's, so to say, the spirit of the law to protect people and their physical material property. This law between persons, which obviously belongs to the realm of social organization, at the same time depends for its efficiency on the moral culture, the personal relationship between the individual and God. You may say theft. What does that have to do with God? That's between man and man. No. The following provide some illustrations. Public transport increasingly operates on an honor system, where it is left to passengers to purchase their own tickets and pay their own fares, with spot checks by inspectors who can impose heavy fines on those who have not paid. Again, it depends exactly where you live, but this is true pretty much. You know, you want to use the train, there's, you know, ways to easily just jump over whatever the turn style is. There's ways to just jump on, or, like, you know, the bus. It's not too difficult. So there's, and I mean, today there's cameras all over the place, but it's still, to a certain degree, there's an honor system. Surely years ago, we all remember that the honor system was all over the place. I mean, I remember the newspaper stands. Haven't seen them in a while, where you pay an amount of money, then you open the thing. There's a stack of newspapers, and you're to take one. You're not supposed to take the whole pile or take more than one. So that's an honor system. The calculation of the fair evader is that he or she will not be caught. The theft will not be seen. On the other hand, one who believes that theft is wrong also because God has prohibited it knows that God is with one on the train and sees, even if the inspector is not present and does not see. This kind of integrity, which stops theft, depends on the personal moral culture. So again, or to use the words that it says in Ethics of the Fathers, there is an eye that sees and an ear that hears. Nothing is missed by God Almighty, of course. So therefore, even if nobody sees and I won't get caught, then there are no cameras somehow. I know that here there's no cameras and the inspector won't catch me. There is a camera and everything's being recorded. It's not just a camera. This is God who's watching. So if you have that belief, then you will not steal. Then there is the attitude towards the other person, whom one is tempted to defraud or exploit. Apart from a desire for personal gain, there is an indifference to the other, which allows one to take advantage of another. So a lot of times when people steal, the problem is they're not thinking about what they're doing to the victim, what they're doing to that person. And they rationalize, I'm not physically hurting them. I didn't need to kill them or even hurt them. I stole where they won't see. I need it. I want it. So therefore, there's a great lack of what you're doing to that person. So you're lacking sensitivity to the person and to their rights. The opposite of this is a sense of fellowship, including the value and dignity of the other. This sense of the other, which works to keep one from theft or deception, is that this person is intrinsically valuable. The person. It's not all about me and selfish, but that person has value, and I have to respect that. In Noahide thought, this is because the other person, as oneself, is made in the image of God. We keep repeating that over and over again, and that was the basis in the beginning, and that's very important. When we remember that, so it's irrelevant as to what type of a person that is, how big or small or wise or stupid or rich or poor or fat or skinny or tall or short, it's irrelevant how he or she are. If they're a human being, they were created in the image of God. If unfortunately they made bad choices and they're on a very, very lowly level due to their poor choices, that just makes it all the more sad. But they were made in the image of God, and therefore I need to respect that person. His or her dignity is ultimately conferred by God, and so cannot be discounted. This awareness comes from the personal moral culture. The final point is that even where an economic exchange is made openly and transparently, provided without theft or injury to person or property, it may yet be an immoral act. Also, the classic examples of this are prostitution, gambling, and drugs. Libertarian doctrine maintains that so long as the activity is victimless, individuals should be allowed freely to contract these services. Because if nobody's getting hurt, quote unquote, and there's no coercion, and all parties involved agree, so what's the crime? We're sitting to gamble, and we have 10 people sitting in a casino or whatever, and we all agreed. All right, no one's going to get angry, hopefully, and pull out a weapon or something. We all agreed, and people know that there's a chance that we're going to walk away losing our pants. And one guy's going to walk away a multimillionaire. and I hope that it's me, and you hope that it's you, and that's the name of the game. So, we know what we're coming into. Or the other examples. No. So why is that not good? Well, again, first, what do they say? It is argued that there is no direct necessary harm or physical injury involved in any of these, and they are tradable services which are free of exploitation and deception. That's what they say. Any of the examples we gave, including prostitution, it's a service, and two adults, we're talking about adults, and they consent and all that. The answer to this comes again from the moral culture. Each of these activities represents a measure of erosion of a value associated with the responsible habitation of the world. So we always quote the verse that says that the world was not created for toyu, for chaos, but rather l'sheves, to make it a proper inhabited world. Prostitution works against the concept of sexuality within a responsible and committed context, the family. Gambling can feed a reckless addiction, which destroys homes and estates, as we all know too well. Some people know it firsthand or secondhand, but we definitely know of it, how because of gambling, people lost their lives or their families or their homes, their business, everything. And drugs erode judgment and responsibility. Whether or not these should be made illegal and prosecuted, they should certainly not be fostered and institutionalized and glamorized by society. So even if you can argue and say that it shouldn't be made illegal, all right, let's for a moment say that, let's say, gambling or drugs should not be made illegal, but it surely should be frowned upon and not glamorized. Middle of page 100. The protection of life and the understanding of life. Nowhere does the underlying worldview of hedonistic materialism, with its non-recognition of creator and soul, come out more strongly than in its failure to protect life. That's the worst of this philosophy. The taking of life, except in specifically morally mandated circumstances, such as in self-defense, right? If a person's life, so then the Torah says that a person is to protect themselves. If you can protect your life by only harming the other person or hurting them, don't go for their life. But if the only way that you can, or there's a good chance that to protect your life in self-defense, you are to kill the other person. That's an extreme case. So other than that, most cases, we protect life. Is the most destructive attack on civilization, the fact that they don't value life properly. The reason why social policy based on hedonistic materialism can annually authorize vast numbers of abortions, and now in certain jurisdictions, euthanasia, is because it understands being human as no more than an active capacity for enjoyment. And we didn't mean for her to get pregnant. Oops, we're not up to it. We don't want to have this child. We're not married. We can't afford it. It was a mistake, whatever. So that's how they view it. And that is so wrong, because here is a person, it's the making of a person who is created in the image of God. This is life. And I mean, the numbers are so scary. If you take a look at how many abortions, I mean, we're going to hear this pretty soon, probably, from who's going to tell us? I think maybe, I forget right now. Somebody's going to tell us the number of aborted babies. It's crazy. It's so scary. If the person exists in a manner which is not definably linked to the active capacity for enjoyment in materialistically conceived terms, this ceases to be a worthwhile life. The fetus does not have this developed capacity for enjoyment, nor may the terminally ill person. In other words, remember, their philosophy is enjoyment, no pain, self-indulgence. If you enjoy it and you're not hurting anybody, that's all that counts. If someone gets hurt, that's a different story. Here, since this is an unborn fetus, it's not even developed yet, or for that matter, somebody is terminally ill, so they say, well, pull the plug. Their humanity has ceased in this view and can be terminated for the benefit of the sufferer in euthanasia or those who suffer as a consequence of that life in the case of abortion. And therefore, what kind of a life is that? That the person is lying there on life support and they have no quality of life. They're not enjoying life. And the person's so old anyway. So therefore, the way they look at it, if you take God out of the picture and living and the purpose of life, which we may not understand. Why does God want this 95-year-old person to be just lying there like a vegetable and not giving anything to society, as we've discussed other times? So first of all, we said that there are explanations, but putting that aside, and if we don't understand, this is God's will. He sent a soul into a body. He made this person in the image of God, and he commands us that we are to do whatever we possibly can to prolong the person's life. And when he decides that it's time to end it, he will end it. We are not to pull any plugs or anything like that. I mean, it gets very detailed and complicated as far as how proactive do we need to be. It does get complicated, but at least the general idea is we are definitely against abortion and we are pro-life and extending life of people that are ill, etc., etc. The Noahide laws are not indifferent to human suffering and seek to alleviate it and to offer care and compassion. We're not saying like some religions have that they say, no, you can't intervene with God and therefore don't kill anybody, but no such thing as medicine, no such thing as going to any type of a physician or a doctor, and you can't. No, we're not saying that. And we don't want people to suffer. And we are to do whatever we can and have compassion. However, the active intervention to terminate life is an incursion against God's proprietorship of life, in which he has invested a purpose as long as a person lives, in which he alone can take or authorize to be taken away. This does not mean that one must always aggressively pursue treatment where there is no prospect of cure and only that of suffering, as I was mentioning. But we may not actively intervene to terminate it. The reason for the suffering of persons is not always clear to us. A transcendent creator has ways which we cannot always fathom. Remember, we barely see one tiny piece of this puzzle, which has so many seemingly infinite pieces to it. So the here and the now that we see and experience, what can we expect? That we should understand that we don't see the huge picture. As long as a person lives, his or her action, speech, and even thought, and as Viktor Frankl stated, even the attitude one takes up towards one's suffering is significant. So even if the person cannot do anything other than think, not only the sufferers, but also others' response to his or her suffering can release a redemptive impetus within the creation, whether it is seen or not. Now, again, that's Viktor Frankl speaking from a philosophical perspective. Surely that fits with a religious philosophy. In addition to the essential wrong of killing, except where it is warranted, such as in self-defense, killing debases society. Abortion on demand and euthanasia actually corrupt social attitudes in other domains. Legislation to implement these, while sometimes enacted as a convenience or concession without affirmation of any principle, in fact, functions to shape society in the expression of these values. You have people that they just come and they say, I want an abortion. All right, just sign here, fill this out, pay this amount of money. And literally, it's anybody for no reason. They don't have to, it's not like, oh, well, let's judge each case and so forth. No. So that itself shapes society. Such laws merely respond to free-willing social trends and ideologies by offering moral deregulation. They pose as alleviating misery, but in fact, they reinforce the trends which produce that misery. Thus, abortion on demand provides relief from, but in fact, only encourages the begoning circumstances of unwanted pregnancy. It serves as a safety net for the expanding culture of non-commitment, whether in de facto relationships or mere promiscuity. It undoes the purpose of the Noahide laws of human sexuality, which is also to teach the significance of sexuality as pertaining to marriage and procreation, and so to create the conditions in which the pregnancies that occur are wanted. Similarly, the laws socially engineered in relation to euthanasia and assisted suicide pose as offering secure to a society in which one's own or others' suffering is increasingly experienced as an intolerable burden. In reality, these laws teach life as something cheaper, both for the sufferer and those meant to support the sufferer. The Noahide prohibition of killing, on the other hand, comes to mold a society which appreciates and supports life as precious. Euthanasia poses as dignity. In fact, it breeds callousness. The most grotesque development in this area is the introduction of child euthanasia in Belgium, where children of any age can now request the taking of their lives. I mean, it's literally unbelievable. Unbelievable. A person has a right to say, life is miserable, I can't stand it, and they say, I would like to commit suicide, please kill me. Crazy. And you're saying that a child can even demand that. In both cases of abortion and euthanasia, the life taken is considered unworthy of a claim to life on account of the sentence or capacity for enjoyment test. Because again, that's the litmus test. That's their whole philosophy. The fetus, because it is mere potentiality, but actual incapacity for significant enjoyment, and the adult or child requesting euthanasia because their physical suffering is great. The spiritual dimension, the accomplishment of meaning, purpose, and value in the unfolding life of the fetus or suffering adult for itself or for others or for creation in general, has no consideration. The question is only, what does the body feel? Not what can body and soul together give or do, and thereby receive a kind of truly valuable spiritual satisfaction and fulfillment, which hedonistic materialism has never grasped. Abortion on demand, euthanasia, and assisted suicide not only destroy the lives of their objects, those people, where killing has become a sanitizing mechanism of society for unwanted lives, it corrupts an entire host of human attributes, values, and attitudes. The fact that the worldview of hedonistic materialism should sponsor killings through abortion, which exceed those accomplished in genocides perpetrated throughout history, must, upon its own reflection, cast doubts on its own purported compassion. So just look at the numbers. How many people were killed in the world through this, that, or whatever, and how many people were killed through abortions. We must do everything we can to alleviate suffering, but a policy which makes killing a reflex to pain is a false and treacherous compassion. The complete compassion is for the whole person, body and soul, with respect for its creator, who entreats us to actualize, not to conceal, the human being through the heights and depths of life, with their enduring capacity to do, say, or think good, and to elicit this in others. Without the perspective of the personal moral culture, which in turn rises upon the concept of what a human being is, first articulated in a worldview which includes God and the human soul, the social law prohibiting killing is blind. What would seem to be the most rational of all human laws, the prohibition of killing, flips into its opposite, murder. It is the soul which makes human life the exclusive possession of its creator and confers an entire realm of meaning on the human being, even in suffering and difficult. If we have no cognizance of the soul, we do not even know or mistake the life which is to be protected. So he made this argument, speaking, I guess, like a lawyer, he's making this argument that you have to have the Noahide, the God-given, the divine code, in order for us to have a normal society, and not to, in a sense, there's a prophecy that speaks about the time before Mashiach, that just before we come to the Messianic era, so one of the prophets says that the people are going to mistakenly, they're going to turn light to darkness and darkness to light. So we're taking something which is the most outrageous sin, and logically, any human being should see it that way, and instead, such a tremendous amount of intelligent people are thinking that it's a good thing. Not only is it not sinful, it's not a crime, it actually becomes a compassionate good deed, and vice versa. So it's really sad. Okay, now at this point, we're going to open up for questions, comments, corrections, and anything, please. Not all at once. I tried to finish the chapter so that we have now time.
Nick.
Go ahead. Nick, please.
Yes, the prohibition of gambling, that also applies to, I guess, lotteries and raffles.
Okay, so he didn't say that it's absolutely prohibited, or at least that wasn't my understanding. Now, forget about what he said over here. Gambling, for a Jew, it depends for what purpose and how often. I'm going to be very legal right now. I'm not talking about the spirit of the law, but legally, technically, if a person gambles and that's the way that he makes his earning, that is his livelihood, by gambling, so that is not allowed for a Jew. And the problem is because on different levels, number of problems, but one problem is that the world is supposed to be civilized and settled, and this type of earning money in such a way, it goes against that. Now, if a person does it for fun or recreation or just once in a while, but that's not the person's job, they have a regular job that they make their earnings and it's fine, and they just do this like because it's fun, they want to make more money on the side once in a while, so that may not be forbidden, and there could be a problem with sort of deception, even though everybody agrees to all the rules and they realize that it's a risk and they're taking a gamble. But since everybody really wants to be the winner and no one wants to part with their money, so therefore, when they do part with it, it has a legal term in the Talmud, which means that the person didn't really agree to this, even though they did, even though they signed their name or whatever. But we know that they didn't really agree. See, when I buy something from someone else, whatever the value truly is in the market, and whatever I'm paying, whether he's giving me a good deal or whether he's overcharging, all within a certain amount, because that also gets very detailed in Jewish law. At the end of the day, I want that item and he wants my money. So we're actually making a fair exchange. I'm happy. Of course, he'd be happier if I would give him the $100 bill and not take his item. And I'd be happier if he'd give me the item and wouldn't take a penny. But in the world of reality, it's a fair exchange. I gave him $100. He gave me this item. We both walk away satisfied. That's not the case by gambling. So therefore, even though the person says it's worth it because I might walk away with my money and your money, but because you're hoping to do the same, then it's not really. So that's a problem. Now, for a Noahide, I would say again, same thing, that if he's doing this on a regular basis, and this is the way he's earning money, it's probably forbidden, falling under this general rule of the verse that says that the world was created not for chaos, but to be properly settled. So that would be the problem with gambling. Does that mean that one is never allowed to gamble? I'm not sure about that. What does Divine Code say about it? Remember? Does it say anything?
I don't remember, but I was just thinking it might be in the category of donuts.
Donuts?
Donuts, yeah. They're not forbidden, they're permitted, but it's not really a positive. It doesn't help society. So it'd be better not to glorify them. It's talking about them not being glorified.
Right.
That's the category it's in.
Right.
Yeah, so it'd be in the category of donuts. Donuts,
So what's donuts? Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah.
I'm missing something.
It's not good for society.
Donuts? Because they're not healthy?
Yeah. It doesn't benefit society, but we're not saying it's forbidden.
In other words, it has to be moderation. Don't overdo it.
Possibly. It depends on the individual.
Don't take away donuts from everybody.
It depends on the individual.
Okay, fair enough. Donuts. I wasn't sure if you meant the kind you eat or the kind that goes on the car. That if you got a flat, so you can drive around with the donut for a while, but it's
but I'm saying donuts are permitted.
Yeah.
They're not. We're not saying that they're forbidden.
Yeah.
But they don't really benefit society. Therefore, they shouldn't be promoted. He was talking not glorifying it, not promoting it.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with a person earning his living by having a donut shop. And the more donuts he sells, I guess an honest living.
Okay, so are we saying that it's an honest living to have a casino?
No, because he is benefiting. That whole business, I would say, is very different than donuts. Because even if the people coming there are not doing this as their full occupation or their full job, but nonetheless, he is promoting an unhealthy behavior. Whereas eating donuts, I don't know. I'm sure I guess that the person who owns a donut shop, if he sees someone is going overboard and he's buying too many for himself, he should, even though he's making money, he should curtail that person's. Anyone else?
Aaron.
Yeah. Okay. I was watching a video of the Rabbi today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And there was a young man came to him and asked him about the stock market and investing his money in the stock market. And the Rebbe was saying to him, why would you invest your money in something that you're going to be losing sleep over, that you're going to be worried about? He said, it's better that you take your money out of the stock market, invest it in a sound investment that is going to make you money, and then get some rest and have peace in your house. So when he said that, it kind of makes me think about what you're talking about right now, because stock market is gambling, pretty much.
Well, I am not 100% sure with what I'm about to say. Okay, so I'm giving that disclaimer. I think that is a case that depends on the individual, and therefore that video that you saw, which is very interesting to hear that, I would not take that as a general rule. Oftentimes, when the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach speaks to someone and tells someone something, we can take that as a general rule and that there may be exceptions. However, oftentimes that person and the directive to him is the exception. And I think it would depend on the individual. Some people are good at quote unquote playing the market. Now, and it also depends on your personality. Some people don't really lose sleep over it. Who is one gambling with or against when you play the stock market? How does that work? Who are you gambling?
Well, there's a difference between playing the stock market and investing in the stock market. A person invests in the stock market, he buys a stock.
That's right.
He's going to hold on to it for an extended period of time. He wants to make money off the dividends.
Right.
That's one category of person. You got another guy who's buying and selling every day. That guy's kind of playing the game of the stock market.
But that's the same idea. Just instead of holding on to it for a year, he's holding on to it for a day.
Yeah, but
exactly.
It's two different things.
That's the same thing. Like you're saying, if the guy is investing, his stock is being invested by other people, and basically he has no control over what's going to happen to it from one day to the next. He's hoping that he'll get a dividend, but that's on those long-term stocks. As you start looking at day traders, they do a different kind of thing, and so some people have a mix of it. And the thing is to me, it's like you're betting on some odds. That's basically what you're doing.
Well, any investment is a quote unquote gamble. Nothing is guaranteed. That's a way to make a living. I knew someone here in Chicago, and I knew him very well. I was a child and he was already in his 90s. And he told me that in the early 50s, which is just after the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach assumed leadership, that he had gotten blessings and was told to invest in certain stocks. And he told me that he listened, but he was told to invest more. I don't remember all the details. And he had told me, this is years later, he told me that had he listened, he would be a very wealthy man today. That's what he told me decades later. And as a kid, as a child, I very innocently asked him, well, why didn't you listen? So he tells me, the way he put it was, I'm going to translate it. He told me that he was lacking his connection, his attachment to this righteous, to the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. Of course, it's difficult. Let me share with you very briefly a very long story. I'll say it really briefly. There was a guy from England. It's a famous story, or you could look it up. Get his name. Anyway, he was involved in the fur business, and he came from England, and he had a private audience with the Rabbi Melech HaMashiach, and basically was told that can I partner up with you? That's the Rabbi Melech HaMashiach told this. Oh, I wish I could remember his name. Slipped my mind. Anyway, can I partner up with you? And I said, fine, but if I'm your partner, so any decision I have to agree with. You don't sell until I agree. I was, of course, have such a righteous person. Everyone knows so many miracles and everything, a miracle worker, and he's gonna the greatest rabbi ever. He's going to become my partner. Wow. Anyway, he told him to buy a tremendous amount of certain furs. And he bought the whole thing. And he says, no, it's not enough. Go find more. And he bought up the whole market. He invested a tremendous amount of money. And right after that, the whole thing basically took a dive, and he wanted to sell out quickly. And the Rabbi Melech HaMashiach told him, nope, not to sell. And he said, I'll let you know. And this person was losing sleep, and he wasn't eating, and he was a smoker, but he became a much heavier smoker, and it was driving him crazy. What's his name? Catch. His last name was Catch. And finally, he kept asking again, and he was told, why you keep asking? And he said, no, hold on to it longer. And then finally he said, if at this point, if he would sell, he'll break even. Nope. And he was going to suffer a big loss. Long story short, the wheel of fortune turned over in his benefit, and now they needed this fur, and there was nowhere to be found. And he had it, and he sold it, and he made a tremendous amount of money. So he traveled then again to New York. In those days, traveling was not as easy as today. I don't know if this was in the 50s or 60s. Traveled again to New York, and he said, I'm coming to give you your cut. 50% of our profit is yours. So the Rebbe HaMashiach told him, thank you, but don't give it to me. Instead, give it to the local Lubavitch institutions in England. Give it to my institutions in England, which, by the way, because of that, they really had a tremendous building and stuff. And then Mr. Catch asked, can we partner up again for another deal? And the Rebbe HaMashiach told him, no, you are a very weak partner, because I told you, and I'll tell you when to sell, and you couldn't. So again, so in that case, as in many business endeavors, people may lose sleep, and it could be, you have to be a certain type of person for certain types of jobs. A lot of jobs are very high stress. So the stock market, just because it may be high stress, doesn't mean you're not allowed to invest in the stock market, and maybe even, I would say, play the stock market. But again, if it's not good for you, and if it's not going to be healthy for you, so then don't bother doing it. If you could invest the money and then forget about it and go to sleep, and a few decades later you find out that you made a tremendous amount of money, or you lost it, good. I forgot about it. I invested $10,000. I didn't even think about it anymore. It's decades later. Fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, gambling is a different story.
Well, can I ask you about the thing you told us when we were going through the divine code? You said buying a lottery ticket is okay, but that's gambling.
Is that gambling? The difference is, again, let me explain the difference. When you have a group of people or one-on-one playing poker or whatever they're doing, I want your money. I see who you are. There's the 10 of us, or 100 people, or one person. Every person there wants. A lottery ticket is a little bit different. Why is it different? You're paying, let's say, $1. You're paying $1, or if you buy many tickets, some people invest in the lottery, and they pay a lot of money. And the idea is, maybe because the lottery is being done by the whatever it is, by the state. Not that makes everything the state does, as we just discussed, proper, but it's not against individuals. Like, let's say let's say this form of gambling. We're going to have a big pot. Everybody puts in some money, and then we're going to draw lots and see whoever's name comes up, he wins the whole pot. Is that gambling?
Yeah.
That's the same thing. That's like throwing dice. You would say that would be gambling.
Yeah, I would say it's gambling.
Mhm. So how does the lottery work? Everyone buys a ticket, and the more people that buy, the more money that's in the pot. And then they draw lots,
Mhm.
and whoever won gets the whole pot. So everyone paid $1, and one guy walks away a millionaire.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So we have to decide, to what extent is it okay to be involved in these victimless vices, and at what point does it become damaging to the individual and to society?
So I'm thinking now, maybe if a person makes their livelihood through lottery tickets, that might be the problem. Like we're saying, person regularly pays a lot of money, loses a lot of money, but then finally somehow wins the lottery. That might be problematic. But if a person just buys one ticket a week or even a day and just spends $1 that he can afford to give up on, and he really, so I don't know. Maybe that's just that ends up being the difference is the amount. When you're gambling, I would think it's larger sums of money that you don't really want to lose. Whereas when it's just $1 or $10, you don't mind losing it. You're putting it in with the understanding that I'm going to lose it. Like they say, all you need is $1 in a dream, and then you're not expecting to win. So you're not expecting to win. Why are you buying the ticket? It's like there's the fellow who would never check his lottery tickets. He would buy and he would not check the tickets. He said, why? Because as long as he doesn't check, he can still have that dream that maybe I won. He said, as soon as he checks, I know I didn't win. But as long as I don't check the ticket, I have that satisfaction that I might be the winner. So he spent $1 every whatever, and he kept all those tickets, and he never checked to see if he won. Because he knows that if I check, I know that I didn't win.
I'll volunteer to take out his wastebasket. James Buchanan?
Yes.
James.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's a good conversation with everybody. If I may, indulge me, I'd like to just ask about something more local. I live in the capital of Springfield, and the governor of the state of Illinois gave his state address and everything like that, and the conversation has been over $1 billion being spent on mass illegal immigration in the state in the last few months. And I was just wondering, in light of that fact, because I know in the Noahide Code, there's talk about like Ger Toshav, like if there's going to be an immigrant into the land of Israel, that there's certain conduct that they should be held as to a standard against. To me, in some ways, this kind of applies now, and it seems like they're not really being held to a ethical standard, a moral standard, as much as what I was learning from the Noahide Code. And I don't mean to cause a ruckus or anything like that, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts or comments about that, sir.
Firstly, I understand why you're comparing it to Ger Toshav in a certain sense, but Ger Toshav is a very, very specific type of situation, and it's, as you said, it's only in the land of Israel, and it's how this person. I understand what you want to compare it to, but it's different. Now, putting Ger Toshav on the side, your question is, if immigrants are coming to a country, can we demand of them certain basic rules or customs that they have to abide by? And the question is, why would they be any different than any of the other citizens? That certain things are illegal and certain things are legal. Unless you want to say that the burden of helping all these people financially and otherwise, because we're not equipped for that. Then the question, okay, so that becomes a more technical, ethical question, which I don't think per se touches upon the Noahide commandments. There's no right and wrong in the details. For example, there's only so much money that the taxpayers are giving. So what's that money supposed to go for? You can say to help us, our children, our elderly people, etc. And now all of a sudden we're flooded with people from another country. We feel very bad for them, but we don't have the finances to help them. Or should we minimize or subtract, I should say, from our help to ourselves and help support them? So that becomes a question of ethics. If someone comes knocking on your door and is asking you for a donation, so you only have so much money and you have to support your family, and this person wants money, so you give them some. If you can, you give them some more. But how to work it out. So I'm not sure what you mean exactly. Are you saying that these immigrants are criminals, are causing problems? Like, what's the problem with we don't have space? Like, what's the yeah?
I'm thinking the question might, the comparison of the Ger Shav is that the Ger Shav, there's a system in place to bring the people in.
Like sort of, and I'm not saying, I mean, a Ger Toshav or somebody being considered. I'm not trying to be too fine by half, but I'm just saying that's the main thrust of everything. I'm not trying to be too specific and paint myself in the corner, but it's just I was just asking in general terms, because I still volunteer on the shelter response team for the American Red Cross, and I still get called and everything. So I'm not coming from well, they're just taking, but I'm just like, what can help me reconcile, wanting to accuse them of taking, but still having compassion, because believe me, I lean towards more be compassionate about it. But why isn't there? I mean, it seems like if you even ask a question, you're being, unfair, or I'm not trying to use another term, but you're kind of being unfair. Well, I'm fourth generation of my family name being here in Central Illinois. I'm fourth generation, and so I'm not. My family was welcomed here years ago. 100+ years ago, and I'm not trying to stand in the way of anybody. And I'm like, it just seems like it's so disorganized and and out of control, that causing a lot of chaos.
Well, this country is known as the melting pot, but otherwise, a country has a right to.
But it doesn't seem like that's the goal with these. It just doesn't seem like it's the goal as much. Letting them in that long. Otherwise, you maybe take a pause. We've had pauses before throughout the history of the country, where they stopped immigration like cold in its track. And I'm just wondering, is that
the United States is unique? It's a kind country. That's what it's known for. Whereas other countries, that if you're not a citizen, it's not easy to get citizenship. We're here, in order to get a green card, become a citizen, is not all that difficult. But do we have a right to deny people? Why not? Again, if they're coming from a place where there's oppression and there's abuse and we need to help them, so then the United States is known to being kind and compassionate and helping them. But otherwise, if you just want to move from some European country and you want to become a citizen here, why? We're allowed to. I don't think there's a problem one way or the other. I don't. Just the general idea is that we want to make this world a proper, civilized world where people are safe and productive, the way that the Creator wants it.
Thank
James,
you. My last thing would just be, I think, from a personal note, it's just too fast. It's just too fast. The rate is just too fast. It's causing a lot of anxiety. But thank you for that, Rabbi. I 100% share that sentiment. I hope we can, come to a proper conclusion, and then everybody's fears are allayed, and we can do it in an orderly way and help as many people as we can, as those resources come available. Thank you.
Go from James.
Hi, Rabbi Turn. Thank you. More to James's point, we were talking about this a few weeks ago, about non-Jewish nations using Torah law, and it would be ger toshav, but it's not a Jewish ger toshav. Basically, it's a ger toshav like American ger toshav. In other words, we have something called a resident alien, and I would think that they would have to go before Beis Din. Of course, not a Jewish court, but it'd be an American court, and they promise to keep the laws. In other words, that would be in reference to din. One of the Sheva mitzvahs is to have dinim. You have to have a civilized world. So when they come here, I don't see why we can't follow even loosely Jewish law. For instance, you mentioned somebody's under duress, or maybe they were a slave, and they're coming to the United States to flee persecution. We should settle them as long as they promise to keep the laws of the land. And I would think that that would be perfectly acceptable in mimicking Jewish law, basically. Of course, we wouldn't call them ger toshav. We'd give them an English title, but a resident alien is a very similar type concept. They're legal, but they're at the same time foreign.
Well, in the country like the United States, who isn't foreign? Who are the real Americans? Aren't we all the
people who accept the Constitution, the
People
law
accept-
of the land? The
So
people
those
who
are-
I'm sorry?
the people who accept the Constitution, what would you categorize them as?
They can become citizens.
Right. So who's the resident alien?
Somebody who has not accepted all the Constitution, who has not accepted all the laws. Maybe they don't understand them all. Maybe they still need to learn. So what we do is we have a garrus for them, where they have to learn the language, they have to learn the laws of the land, and there's an onboarding process. And this is what happens today. I'm not familiar with all the details, but there is an onboarding process. In other words, they are in gerus, basically, to become an American citizen. And if they want to apply for citizenship through a port of entry in another country, they can apply there, kol makom, kind of like the Rambam uses, where they can be accepted in all places to come to the United States. And it's up to us through basically like a Beis Din to accept them or not.
I think that's pretty much what there is now. Can a person have dual citizenship and have several passports legally?
As long as they accept the laws of those lands, I would think so.
So a guy
That's
can
kind of
have
my point.
be a legal citizen of 10 different countries.
Right. That's my point, though. Like, you just can't come in and it's not a free-for-all. You have to accept the law of the land.
That's why they're called illegal aliens.
Right.
There's no chance of hearings currently. With
Right.
the way this
So
is hooked
you're
up.
saying it's happening too fast. The numbers are too much for the system to handle, because these are
Yeah.
people, they're not numbers. I got it. Okay, but that's the idea of a person, getting the green card, and then they go before the, that's exactly the point, and they have to be tested on the basic laws of the land. Yeah, that's what we have.
we've got several people there. Aaron?
Yeah. So as I'm listening to this conversation, I'm thinking about, what the rabbi is saying. Who's not a person who's an immigrant here? The African Americans are not immigrants. We were brought over here. However, the most of the other cultures in this country are not from this country. They all came over here in masses and floods by the millions, and the Irish came over here. Who do we got coming over now? The guys from over there in Ukraine. The Ukrainians are coming here, and there's probably more of these other people from Europe coming here than the people from the Latin countries. But we don't have anything to say about that. We got something to say about the ones coming from the southern border, and so that's the problem. Is because a lot of us.
Perfectly legal. It was perfectly legal to do that. Though.
Yeah, it is, and it actually has a process, and a lot of the people are getting work permits and work visas like the other people from the other places get. Is that wrong for them to get those work visas? A lot of people believe it is, but
as long as they're going through the denim, as long as they're doing what is one of the 7 laws B'nai Noach of denim, going through the proper process of the land.
Well, that's how you get a work permit. You have to go through the proper process.
Right. But what James, I think, is pointing out is that they are coming over not through a port of entry, but rather they're breaking down fences, basically, which is transgressing. Like, for instance, I cannot go into a shul or something and say, and I've been there where people have been, there's Ger Toshav, we're all Ger Toshav, gimme, or whatever. You can't do that. You can't break down borders and just declare that you are now a citizen of a principality that you're not accepted in. You have to be makablin. You have to be accepted before a beis din and go through the dinim process.
Okay. If someone pointed out that we do have an international audience here, and so we don't want to get too wrapped up in American politics right now. iPhone 7 had a question, had his hand up. I'm sorry that I'm not sure your name. iPhone 7?
It's Fred LaRolles, Bob.
I'm sorry?
It's Fred LaRolles on iPhone 7.
Okay, thank you.
It's Fred Rawls. So I've been listening to this for the last couple of minutes, and I think the point was about the Gerater Shav and the comparison with immigration. I guess is the ethical thing about to become a legal citizen, or like even a Gerater Shav, they have to agree to abide by a certain ethical code while living among the Jewish people. And that's the same way the process in legal immigration is when someone comes into the land legally, that what they're supposed to do, because I had to go through this a couple times, is there's a process. It takes time, it takes money, it takes paperwork. I mean, it's a major process. So to me, and a lot of people that come in here illegally, they're not, they come with different languages, and we already see the burden on the country is because there's not even schools that are set up to interpret all these languages. I mean, and to be able to understand these people and things that are going on, and they're bringing their culture with them. So that's why, you got to have legal immigration. That's what it's meant for, is so you don't bring a burden on the land like you see today. Now we know that it's caused by a lot of our government. We get to see that. But the thing is, according to the Torah, you got to have, the 7 Noahide laws to establish courts of justice. That's what you want. You want justice, not injustice. So, and we see that what's happened today is a lot of violent crimes are happening because these people, they don't speak the language, and they're causing violence and crime. So that's the epidemic that's been caused by this. So in the same way with the, I can imagine if someone has a Ger Toshav among Jewish people making noise on the Sabbath when they're there. You know what? It won't be too long that person is going to be out of there. Why? Because, if you get an Orthodox Jewish community on the Sabbath, it's peaceful. There's no music. There's nothing like that. And you come in there and you make a noise, blah, blah, blah. You're going against the code of conduct that is represented here. And that's what we see. I think that's what James is trying to make is the comparison between, you know, when someone becomes a Geratoshav, he's got to agree by a standard when he lives there. And it's the same way when someone goes through legal immigration, at the end of their service, they have to swear in to the Constitution of America and abide by our laws, not their laws. So basically, they get up the citizen of their own country to become an American, and that's what the legal immigration process works. So you don't have that. Not to mention, they got to be able to take care of themselves, be able to go to work, find a job, and all that stuff. So, you know, that's that comparison of the two. What you think, Rabbi?
Huh? I hear you.
Okay, thank you. And
I have one more question because I wanted to finish my thought with Rabbi
Go
Tur.
ahead.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
When it comes to the abortion on demand, now I know that one of the issues that we've been wrestling with in our community is this fact that there are women that have had 4 and 5 and 6 abortions, and that was one of the reasons why people were getting upset about the process, because it's like you're using it as contraceptives. And the question I would have is it proper for a man to marry or to develop a life with a woman who is doing that or has done that over and over again?
Did she willingly had the abortions?
Multiple abortions.
So I would say that even though she committed a terrible sin and she may not have known that it was so terrible, so that's a separate issue, but is so long as she accepts upon herself in this relationship that she with this man who is thinking of marrying her, if she accepts that she won't do it anymore, she'll stay married to him, she won't have any promiscuous relations with anyone else because she's married to him and to him alone. And if she again conceives and becomes pregnant, she will not have an abortion. Then I think it would be a wonderful thing for him to marry her if everything matches up. Of course, you know, he's taking a person who's sounds like she's, you know, in a very unfortunate situation, and is taking her in and setting up a family with her, having her as a partner, and putting an end to that misconduct. So just by in general, not getting into specific cases, but the way you described it, I would think would be a great thing.
Okay.
Right. Encourage her modesty in the future.
Especially if she's your wife. All right. So we are looking at next week. New chapter. Chapter 5, page 105. And looking forward to seeing all you guys. And in the meantime, have a wonderful week. And stay safe and happy. And keep on doing the right thing and promoting it. And all the best, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good night.